But let's just get into the ins and outs of the TikTok ban, because we were talking about it earlier today on the Four Horsemen episode. By the way, by the time this gets to YouTube, if you want a good companion piece, go over to that VOD on the Insight on Esports / Last Free Nation channel, and you'll be able to watch it. And we get into a lot of the ins and outs. And funnily enough, the things that I predict on there have actually come to pass in the same day that we recorded that episode. But let's just start at the beginning. That's always the best place to start. I'm sure you're all saying, oh, Daddy Richard, we're scared, we don't understand. Why is there a TikTok ban in the first place? It doesn't make any sense. I like my brain rot, skibbity riz. Okay, right. Well, let a non-zoomer answer your questions about how we got here. I'll go to CBS first, because they have a pretty decent summary in this article, which if you want to read along, why is TikTok banned? What's behind the law that shuttered the app? And this was updated today because of the recent developments, but it was published a few days ago. But it's got a pretty good summary, and this is because TikTok is owned by a company called ByteDance, and ByteDance are a Chinese company. And I don't want to shock anyone with this, America and China have this almost adversarial relationship. I know you're shocked, but it's actually true. And it's an adversarial relationship in the way that only superpowers can sort of have with each other. And so the issue has been, well, ByteDance is a company that has ties to the Chinese government in the same way every big corporation in China does. I've talked about this a lot in my previous content, but just to give you the skinny, there's this thing called the golden share. It ultimately means that if the Chinese Communist Party at any point wants to take a cut of your profits, like they did with Tencent not that long ago, they can. If they want to make demands of you, they will. And quite crucially, it is a matter of law that if the Chinese government demands that a company that operates within its territory, or even a Chinese company that has territories outside of China, the data they collect, should the government request it for intelligence purposes, investigation purposes, or any other purposes, nefarious or not, the company must comply. It's not up for debate. We went over all of this with the Huawei and Vanguard. We've covered this before. Interestingly enough, when we were talking about all of this as it pertains to Vanguard, people were telling me, no, that's not true. 100% true. Then people were telling me, well, it doesn't matter because, you know, what type of information is it going to get? Riot Games have said Vanguard only take a little bit. And then you go, okay, here's the list of the things that they can potentially take. Yeah, but I'm sure they wouldn't. And even if they would, they wouldn't comply. Okay, you tell yourself whatever you have to tell yourself to install Chinese malware on your PC. I just simply won't play their games. And we'll see who comes out on top. Anyway, there's been long-running concerns as it relates to this. And I will just refer you to a story just to show you this isn't blind hysteria, because I've seen some people call it another Red Scare. They're saying this is part of an American Red Scare. They're terrified of TikTok because they're terrified of China, because they're terrified of communism. It's a Red Scare. Just to show you it's not a Red Scare is this story here. And this was TikTok admitting that it has used its app to spy on reporters in an effort to track leaks. And I'll read you the details. This was originally reported in the Financial Times. When I talked about this earlier, I couldn't remember if it was the Financial Times or Forbes. TikTok has admitted it used its own app to spy on reporters as part of an attempt to track down the journalist's sources, according to an internal email. The data was accessed by employees of ByteDance, TikTok's Chinese parent company, and was used to track the reporter's physical movements. The company's chief internal auditor, Chris Lepetak, who led the team involved in the operation, has been fired, while his China-based manager, Song Yi, has resigned. They looked at IP addresses of journalists who were using the TikTok app in an attempt to learn if they were in the same location as employees suspected of leaking confidential information. The effort, which targeted former BuzzFeed reporter Emily Baker White and Financial Times reporter Christina Criddle, among other reporters, was unsuccessful, but resulted in at least 4 members of staff based in both the US and China improperly accessing the data, according to an email from ByteDance General Counsel Eric Anderson. All 4 have been fired. Company officials said they were taking additional steps to protect user data. So this wasn't the biggest scandal. It wasn't the worst outcome. It wasn't as crazy as it could have been. But obviously, what you have to remember with the TikTok app is it gains access to anything that you access through your phone, or if you're using it on a desktop, through that. It can gain access to your microphone. It can gain access to your browsing history. It can fucking turn your webcam on. It can just turn the microphone on and listen in. It can be essentially a listening device in the same way anything with that kind of kernel level access that we've talked about in the past can be. And quite crucially, TikTok is one of the most popular apps in the world. It is the de facto platform for all the fucking skibbity riz generation. It's what they use to convey information. So you have the very genuine concern about what TikTok can and can't do and who it might end up with, given the Chinese government's ability to simply request that data at any time. I'm sure there's a lot of Western journalists that the Chinese government would really like to learn about their sources, right? And imagine if you're a Chinese whistleblower and you're talking to an American journalist through encrypted channels, and then because that journalist recorded a shitty TikTok dance in the afternoon, you get exposed and you get fucking disappeared back in your native China. Not an ideal situation, and one that obviously lots of people are keen to avoid, because I know it's not popular with the kids, but unfortunately, yes, the Chinese government is tyrannical. Yeah, we all love the hammer and sickle. We all love the C word, don't we, when we're kids? But unfortunately, yeah, it's not all a bed of roses on that side of the financial equation either. So, next thing to take into consideration. There's also been a lot of concern about TikTok as what they call a social contagion. What does that mean? It sounds pretty dark and bleak. Well, what it is essentially, in simple terms, stupid opinions, misinformation, and dangerous practices get circulated very quick on social media, and none more quickly, it seems, than TikTok, due to its nature of being short, digestible clips, originally designed to be about 60 seconds. I think they go up to 10 minutes now, but they were originally meant to be no longer than 3. And they are easy to spread, easy to watch. You're just scanning through all of the time, and it's very easy on your phone to upload a response, send it out there. It's very much kind of in the spirit of Vine, with the exception that it's certainly more popular, but also a lot easier to just put stuff up there on TikTok. And again, this is all by design. So what happens when bad ideas, right, and we can use that if you like for bad ideas, but what happens when bad ideas get spread among the youth of America? Well, let me give you a recent example. You probably heard about this Israel-Palestine thing, right, at some point that's going on. And I don't want to get into, we don't have to all fling shit at each other and Zionist pig and, terrorist and all that stuff. Let's not do that, right? But obviously, because politics is kind of downstream from culture, kids are way more engaged in their teenage years with politics and now geopolitics than they ever used to be. And so the Israel-Palestine conflict has obviously generated a lot of content and a lot of attention. And on TikTok, because of the demographic, a lot of people are obviously more broadly sympathetic to the plight of the Palestinian people and what's been happening in the West Bank and Gaza. And so what ended up happening was, back in the day, there was a thing called 9/11. Except it was named after a terrible terrorist attack where 2 planes were flown into the Twin Towers. And that was orchestrated by the leader of Al-Qaeda, a radical Islamist group called Osama bin Laden. And Osama bin Laden obviously had nothing to do with the CIA or anything like that, and was able, through the Western media, to communicate his beliefs and his rationale for the attacks that he perpetrated, and certainly did. And one of the things that was published was, it was called A Letter to America. And in it, Osama bin Laden lists a bunch of things, a bunch of reasons for why radical Islam will always attack America. And in it, it says, everything you've done in the Middle East, all the proxy people you've installed, all the atrocities you've committed, all the murders of our people. And one of the reasons is you prop up Israel. And Israel has killed all of these, has been at war with all these countries and killed all these Muslim brothers and sisters. And we cannot forgive this. And it's laid out because Osama bin Laden, and not the CIA, but Osama bin Laden was obviously a very well-educated individual and wrote these things out in a very matter-of-fact, it's quite a well-written letter. It's not like, death to America! It's not like that. It's a well-written diatribe as to the rationale of heinous extremist terrorist action. Now, the Western media were all too happy to publish that. And by the way, I don't hate that. I hate this new thing we do where we don't publish all manifestos. I don't see the point. I think if there's an atrocity, I'd like to know the motivations behind it. But anyway, the Western media published it, and then it resurfaced on TikTok during the Israel-Palestine thing. And guess what the kids' conclusion was? The kids' conclusion was, that bin Laden's got some points, hasn't he? Didn't know bin Laden was so based, is what the kids were saying. And suddenly you had this letter from bin Laden trending with TikTok influencers reading bin Laden rhetoric in snippets, doing that thing where it's in the background and they're pointing up to it and going, right? And they're doing that, and this is spreading like wildfire. It was so bad, The Guardian, a British publication, took down their link to the letter to America that bin Laden had written when they published it, because they were getting sick and tired of it appearing in the background of these TikTok videos. So, another popular terrorist that came to the forefront was obviously Ted Kaczynski, the Unabomber. His manifesto was being read in these TikTok videos. What American politicians and American thought leaders started to pontificate was, why is this being pushed on our kids? Why are kids on TikTok being served up algorithmic slices of terrorist rhetoric? And it's a good question. And because ByteDance won't release the details of the algorithm, which is the key reason as to why they've pushed ahead with a ban, all they would have had to do is share the algorithm so the British government, the US government could look and see what they were doing with it. They refuse to do that, which kind of gives the game away. But the assumption, therefore, is, this is a Chinese-owned app that will comply with the Chinese government's demands, and it is making the youth of America hate America. That seems a bit weird. And weirder still, when you look at what's being served up in China, it's not the same at all. Wasn't a big push to overthrow the government. There weren't clips of the Dalai Lama circulating around, right? So obviously this is controlled algorithmically. Is it natural? Maybe. I would argue probably, but we don't know. And this obviously made American politicians very unnerved. And look, to a lesser extent as well, remember when everyone started fucking huffing and vaping Tide Pods and doing that thing where they ride a bicycle down the road into a car and swerve away in the last minute, or stick firecrackers up their arsehole, or whatever the fucking latest dangerous trend is? That's all TikTok. That's all TikTok. It's like, kids will always engage in risk-seeking behavior. That is part of growing up. But I certainly don't need to go for the extra popularity brownie points of doing the fucking throw yourself off a bridge challenge. You know what I mean? And that unfortunately is a concern as well, because this type of remember the Bird Box? That was a social media thing. I'm pretty sure that happened on TikTok, where it was completely fake. The Bird Box challenge, that shit film with Sandra Bullock, where she has to wear the blindfold and people were trying to like drive cars doing the Bird Box. I mean, people are morons, you know, obviously, but kids are allowed to be morons. Yeah, that's the whole point. And yeah, not all of them are going to make it. The downside of being a moron is it's pretty easy to die when you're a moron, and it's sad. It's not their fault. You do grow out, well, you don't always. Esports has proven that, obviously. But you generally grow out of being a moron. And then you go, fucking hell, remember when I was a moron? Do you remember that? Remember all that moronic stuff I did? And you go, yeah, I'm not going to do that. I'll tell my kids not to do it. And then they do worse. Such is life. Anyway, all of this led to, initially, a sit down with TikTok going, yeah, we don't like this, and we don't like the fact you've got American users' data. They set up something in 2022 called Project Texas, as you can see here. And Project Texas was a pledge to the American government that data would stay on servers hosted in the US, and it wouldn't be going to China. But it's data, I can just grab it, can't I? So, you know. So that didn't work. Then, the White House, because remember, they were all having all those fuckers, the grown-ups were back in charge. We had all them TikTok influencers in there, like literally recording TikToks. Joe Biden on a TikTok, Harry J. Sisson, that dude with the long nails and the dress, who's strangely hot. Like, I don't know. But they were all recording TikToks in the White House, and everyone went, well, that's bad, and so we're going to ban that. And so then it got banned on all US government apps, didn't it? And so they took it, so, okay, what comes next? Well, you have to ban it. It's got to go. And they said to ByteDance, all you have to do is comply with this, give us the algorithm, or you're going to have to sell the company. And you're going to have to sell the company to another company that isn't beholden to the Chinese government, ideal US-based partner. And ByteDance said, well, we're absolutely not selling. So I'll read. So TikTok went to the Supreme Court, and TikTok's lawyer couldn't deny that, yeah, there were potential national security risks. Which wasn't the best defense. I talked to a few people that understand the legal argumentation around this, and they said that basically there probably is a First Amendment free speech argument you can make for the non-banning of TikTok, but instead they chose to make that argument as if TikTok was an individual and not a company and a platform, and they chose to also just be honest, I guess, and not even couch what they were saying and go, yeah, fuck it. Can't guarantee nothing. Probably is a bad idea. So I'll read it to you. This is the quote. I think Congress and the president were concerned that China was accessing information about millions of Americans, tens of millions of Americans, including teenagers, people in their 20s, that they would use that information over time to develop spies, to turn people, to blackmail people who a generation from now will be working in the FBI or the CIA or in the State Department, said Justice Brett Kavanaugh. Remember him? He took a break from boofing in the Devil's Triangle to say this. Is that not a realistic assessment by Congress and the president of the risks here? Noel Francisco, who represented TikTok, responded, I'm not disputing the risks. I'm disputing the means that they have chosen. So ultimately, like, okay, well, yeah, fuck you then, I guess. Like, you are a risk to national security. What do you want us to do at this point? But it is worth noting, if that sounds like a Republican piece of hysteria, again, this titular red scare that people are talking about, remember, that's exactly what the Chinese government does. I mean, we all remember Fang Fang and Eric Swalwell. I can't remember which Republican politician it was who called her Yum Yum, but it was Fang Fang. And, that this is what they do. It's not like spies in the movies where they're there and they, whisper sweet nothings in your ear, get the secrets and then shoot you in the head. No, they stay involved in your life for years and use you as a fucking asset over a long period of time until they eventually get discovered, reassigned, or you're no longer useful to the foreign power. It's not just China, it's just China are particularly good at it, right? And that is definitely how they operate. And they would love to get people inside the CIA, FBI, which I'm sure they haven't up until now. That's just how it works. There's foreign operatives all over the place. We're also fucking dialed in on Russia right now. I used this example on the other podcast. When you distract a cobra, right? You hold this up, and America's the cobra, and this is Russia. And it's like, it's rearing up. This is a cobra, by the way, right? It's rearing up. And while that's happening, China's coming around like Steve Irwin and getting the fucker's tail. And that's exactly what's been going on. It's like, you can have more than one foreign adversary at once, America. Especially if you're America. You definitely can. Anyway, it goes on. Solicitor General Elizabeth Preligar asserted that TikTok collects unprecedented amounts of personal data that will be incredibly valuable to the Chinese government by giving it a powerful tool for harassment, recruitment, and espionage. I mean, there's another aspect to it as well, the harassment aspect. We've talked a lot about one of the worst things about the Trump years was every dickhead on the internet learnt the word compromat because the PP tapes were very real, weren't they? They even gave Tom Arnold a documentary searching for the PP tapes. Never found the PP tapes. Turns out there's no PP tapes. It was a 4chan hoax like everything else that happened in those years. But anyway, there's shit that goes on TikTok, I'm pretty sure. And because obviously it can be used as a spy tool, what you say in private isn't always what you might want in public. My dudes, I'm a chill guy. I'm not mean, right? I'm a chill guy. But I have friends around. We drink. We shit talk. I fucking make sure that Amazon Fire Stick ain't in the room. Like, it drives me insane that all of these things are like, yeah, well, obviously we're just recording your voice the whole fucking time, right? You just record your voice the whole time. But don't worry, we're only using it for, like, marketing purposes. Nah, I'm good. I don't want big American corporations having my private conversations recorded. Don't think that's a good idea, to be fair. So anyway, for years, the Chinese government has sought to build detailed profiles about Americans, where we live and work, who our friends and co-workers are, what our interests are, and what our vices are, she said, citing major data breaches that the US has attributed to China over the last decade, including the hack of the Office of Personnel Management that compromised the personal information of millions of federal employees. In the end, the Supreme Court decided to hold up the ruling. And by the way, you know how this is a Supreme Court that is going to give Trump the powers of an emperor and a king and will only do his bidding. Think about that, right? And then think about some of the other decisions they've done recently. And the fact that this was 9-0, completely unanimous, to uphold the ban. And now Trump, as we'll get to, is the one going, yeah, well, I hear I'm big on TikTok. I hear I'm so popular on TikTok. I'm the biggest influencer on TikTok, so we're gonna unban TikTok. We're gonna defy the Supreme Court. It's like, oh, all right, cool. I mean, shit, we got the other guy fucking 2 days out of office just declaring there's a 28th Amendment to the Constitution. There isn't. Just spoiler, a tweet does not a constitutional amendment make. But you try telling the fucking Democrats that. Anyway, so it was upheld. It was upheld. Good news. And so that's that. We end up hurtling into the day of it being banned. In fact, here we are. Let me show you. People were reacting to it and being sad. Now, remember, of course, right, during the build-up to the election, all the young, cool, hip, TikTok influencers, who were they out for? They were all out for Kamala Harris. It was white dudes for Kamala, Hollywood for Kamala, influencers for Kamala. They were all out there, and they were all for Kamala Harris, and Trump was bad. Remember, Trump obviously is a Hitler who's going to install himself, has got emperor for life, he's going to erode all of our norms, put us all in camps, and then we're all going to be sat there, crying, going, well, first they came for the TikTok influencers, and I did not speak out, for I was not. That's the future, okay? That's what you're supposed to believe if you go on Reddit, right? And I would just advise that I saw a news report today that said something like therapists say their clients are not ready for the return of Trump. Just take the medicine and stay off the internet, please. But anyway, it did make me laugh because I saw this. Everyone's favourite beautician influencer, James Charles.
I gotta keep it real. I am crashing the fuck out right now. I don't know what to do. Oh my god. I've already opened and closed the app probably 6 times already just to keep getting the same stupid warning message. Oh my god. Like, this just feel, I can't, this is so dystopian. First of all, I feel pathetic that I am freaking out like this over an application being unavailable on my phone. But also, like, this has been a massive part of our life for the last 6 years. And normally when something happens, I would get on TikTok and start complaining, and I can't even do that. I feel like disconnected. I feel cut off from the world and my community. This is crazy. This is fucking crazy. God, and I can't, like, now I'm rooting for Trump? Ew! God, like, make America fucking great again, I guess. God.
MAGA! We claim another one. Right. So, you know, far be it from me to say that, you know, TikTok influencers aren't principal people or anything like that. But as soon as the sniff of the TikTok app being cruelly snatched away from them was there, obviously all of the TikTok influencers were kind of like, please help us, Trumpy one Kenobi. You are our only hope. Now, look, it wasn't just TikTok, because obviously ByteDance owns many properties, and so another property was affected by this, and this was Marvel Snap, a card game, a digital card game, one that was made by some of the former Hearthstone team, including most famously Ben Broad, and that ended up getting banned as well. People logged in, and there was the message that you were getting. Marvel Snap isn't available right now. A law banning Marvel Snap has been enacted in the US. Unfortunately, that means you can't use Marvel Snap for now. Rest assured, we're working to restore our service in the US. Please stay tuned. And so I will just read you a little bit of the rationale. Here it is. In a statement on X, Second Dinner, that's the development company, called the takedown a surprise and said Marvel Snap isn't going anywhere. We're actively working on getting the game up as soon as possible, and we'll update you once we have more to share. Just before the calendar turned over to January 19th, 2025, the game disappeared from the App Store for iPad and iPhone players and from Google Play for players on Android. For players on PC, the game is still listed in Steam, but many players are reporting they were signed out and now can't sign back in. Oddly, unlike TikTok, it doesn't appear that players were given much warning about the law's effect, and many people may not have realised it was even connected to ByteDance, including people who were still spending money on in-game items, expecting to be able to keep playing it. Other ByteDance apps quickly disappeared from app stores along with TikTok, including Lemon 8. Don't know what Lemon 8 is. Does anyone know? Is that like Lemon Party? Like, I don't know, whatever. And CapCut. The effect on other ByteDance linked apps is mixed. However, it may take time to remove them. The Lark app, that offers a Slack-like collaboration platform, was available initially, but now has now been removed, while other Newverse published games like Earth Revival Deep Underground and Ragnarok X 3rd Anniversary are still available in the App Store. Good news, everyone. So, it seems to have these wide, or it did, again, we're going to get to it, it seemed to have these wide-reaching implications, in the sense, and indeed applications, in the sense that other games that had none of the supposed issues of TikTok were also being caught in this crossfire. And you have to ask yourself, I suppose, theoretically, Marvel Snap, it takes America's data, it's connected to ByteDance. How much data it takes compared to TikTok, I don't know. But can Marvel Snap on your phone? It probably does. I've seen this in multiple games and multiple, all the gacha games. Can it just turn on your webcam, your phone cam, your microphone? Yeah, often they can. Can it check your bank balance? Yeah, if you access your bank, it can have a look. Have a look at how much you've got in there, right? So that's pretty wild. And maybe it turns out, well, if you're associated with these big Chinese companies that can't be trusted, maybe you just shouldn't be allowed to operate in America according to these laws. Obviously, there were a lot of complaints about this. I did hear that the Snap subreddit was in uproar and an absolute shit show. I'm not going to get into the Reddit reading component of the stream. And what I will do is, instead, I will just remind you about this other little delicious detail, because it's all happening right now. And I talked about this on the previous stream, the last stream I did. This is the US government designating Tencent a Chinese military company. The US added several Chinese technology companies, including gaming and social media giant Tencent and battery maker CATL, to a list of businesses it says works with China's military. The list serves as a warning to American companies and organizations about the risks of doing business with Chinese entities. While inclusion does not mean an immediate ban, it can add pressure on the US Treasury Department to sanction the firms. And what you have to understand is Tencent owns lots of things, but from a gaming and esports perspective, it owns League of Legends, it owns Riot Games. Now, I joked on the last stream that I was going to sit down and write a letter to Ted Cruz. I am going to do it. I don't know why Ted Cruz is the person I'm pinning all of my hopes on, but based on what's happened in the last 24 hours with ByteDance that we're going to get to, there's probably a good chance that this is all going to be amended. And what's going to happen is there's going to be, if you're one of these companies that has this designation, there's going to be pressure for you to sell or at least share your company with an American entity. And by the way, that would be delicious. Why would that be delicious, Richard? Well, that's what China insists you do if you want to do business in China. You have to have a Chinese business partner if you want to sell things there, and you have to have a profit share with them. That's just the nature of how it works. So why shouldn't America treat Chinese companies the same way? I don't know. If only there was some sort of master of the deal coming into the White House. If only. Alas. But look, I do have a dream. I have a dream that there's still a chance we could get League of Legends, even if it was banned for a week. Even if Valorant was banned for a month. This would be such a win, such a W. A way to stick it to Riot in a way that's never been stuck to them before by me, Richard Lewis. This is the fantasy right now. This is where I'm at. So I am going to write that letter. I'm going to try and just leverage every connection I've ever made by briefly operating in the right-wing grifter sphere. I'm going to try and just call everyone up. You got the number for Ted Cruz? Hello? Yep. All right. Yep. We're gonna try. And then what I'm hoping is going to happen is the entirely owned by Tencent Riot Games are going to have to be sold to someone else, either partially or in full. And that's the only way they're allowed to install Vanguard. It's fucking malware on your computer. And then if that happens, there's a chance that the company that buys it aren't going to tolerate all of the D20 egomaniac bullshit, and suddenly Mark Merrill, LARPing as a TV producer at the moment, claiming he invented adult animation by producing Arcane, he might be out of a job, and that would be the ultimate victory. I would suggest Elon Musk, but obviously if Elon Musk bought Riot Games, he'd have a dude boosting his League of Legends account within seconds. And that's just the same as Mark Merrill, so aka Trindamere. Anyway, on a serious note, I do think that this designation has the potential to cause further issues. And ByteDance, obviously, have been the recipient of some of these other issues, despite not having this designation because of the nature of their app and what it can and can't do. So let's fast forward to where we ended up. Not long after finishing recording the episode of The Four Horsemen we did talking about all of this, Donald Trump went on Truth Social. And I knew it was serious because he didn't use caps lock. And he said the following. He said, "I'm asking companies not to let TikTok stay dark. I will issue an executive order on Monday," that's tomorrow, to extend the period of time before the law's prohibitions take effect so that we can make a deal to protect our national security. The order will also confirm that there will be no liability for any company that helped keep TikTok from going dark before my order. Americans deserve to see our exciting inauguration on Monday, as well as other events and conversations. I would like the United States to have a 50% ownership position in a joint venture. By doing this, we save TikTok, keep it in good hands, and allow it to stay up. Without US approval, there is no TikTok. With our approval, it is worth hundreds of billions of dollars, maybe trillions. Therefore, my initial thought is a joint venture between the current owners and/or new owners, whereby the US gets a 50% ownership in a joint venture set up between the US and whichever purchase we so choose. And so everything about this is classic Trump. It's the ultimate Trumpian play. Trump, by the way, was one of the people who supported the TikTok ban. It was Biden that enacted it, but Trump had certainly said, you know, we should take a look at that kind of thing and national security and America first and all of that stuff. And then what ended up happening is on the campaign trail, Donald Trump, who probably paid very little attention to TikTok because we all know he's so addicted to Twitter that when he was banned from Twitter, he created a Twitter clone and then started just tweeting nonsense into the void, where the only people that had fucking Truth Social accounts, apart from the Donald Trump family, were the journalists that wanted to post his truths on Twitter. So he then got told while he was on the campaign trail by his son Barron, oh no, TikTok's really big and it's really good and you're doing really good over there. And by the way, TikTok was sort of instrumental in kind of papering over some of his outrageous faux pas. If you want to go and watch the Kamala and Trump debate breakdown, you'll see TikToks of him when he's screaming about people in Ohio. They're eating the dogs! They're eating the cats! TikTok just turned that into a funny song. They weren't concerned about the racial implications of what he was saying, the fact it was fake. No, it's funny. It's a funny old man screaming, they're eating the dogs. Let's put this on a loop and let's do the eating the dog dance to it. And that's how it went. Turns out that people got so sick of the sanctimonious, no fun Democrat Party where everything's got to be super serious all of the time. And if you're a young guy, fuck you, that Trump was back and kind of hip and cool again. Probably instrumental in, if not, it probably didn't earn him a lot of votes, but it probably kept a lot of fucking people who would have voted Democrat from going to the ballot that day thinking, fuck it, let's roll the dice. So, fast forward to now, he then is saying, hey, TikTok likes me. And this is the other classically Trumpian aspect. All you have to do to be called competent and the best by Donald Trump is kiss his ass. If you kiss his ass, he thinks you're great. And if you call him bad, he fires you and then uses whatever strength at his disposal to fucking, you know, back before he was in politics, it would be his social media presence or his media presence. Now it's his political power. And if you kiss his ass, you're good, you're great, you'll always have a really good time with him. He will promote your shit till the ends of time. And so TikTok, the fucking guys at TikTok, I've heard all sorts of shit about this. I've heard rumors that, you know, they were like sending data to Mar-a-Lago and stuff like this and saying, oh, you know, you're fucking, you know, you're so popular on TikTok. And all of this to build up to where we're at now, which is Donald Trump is now saying, look, I'm going to give you a 90-day extension on, you know, not putting that ban in place. And what we'll do is we'll do a deal with an American entity that will own 50% of TikTok. Now, what are the odds on this entity being someone in Trump's orbit, do you think? I could see Pete Thiel or someone like that maybe, or if not an individual, certainly a company that's been, let's say, adjacent to Trump of late. You know, like it could be absorbed into Meta, for example. I don't know if Facebook would want to do that, but maybe it doesn't hurt having TikTok and Instagram, assuming you could get that past a monopoly board. Obviously, Dana White on the board of Meta now. Who knows? Maybe the company that owns the UFC. Maybe they want to have an official app. It could be anyone, but I don't think it's going to be like out of left field, some sort of independent company that isn't Trump adjacent. I think in many ways, this was all kind of a long play to end up where we're at. And while I don't think Trump plays five-dimensional chess, five-dimensional Jenga, I barely think he plays fucking three-dimensional checkers. But the reality is certainly that this ban has really got to the brink. TikTok are staring at the reality of the ban being implemented, and not just for TikTok, for other apps, for other things ByteDance owns. And the reality is now it is better to sell and to have a diminished share of something that's profitable than to have nothing at all in the American market. The real question then becomes, will they insist, as they had prior to this, on the algorithm? Will they insist that we still see what the algorithm was up to? Probably not, because they've made it abundantly clear we don't want to show that on the grounds that it is proprietary technology. So all in all, the hysteria around the big TikTok ban didn't really last all that long, and we ended up today with it's already been restored. It went off, it's back. Don't worry, James Charles. Don't worry, sisters. You don't have to praise Trump now, although he did do this, didn't he? He's been doing lots of good things lately that people don't want to credit him for. But anyway, TikTok is resuming services to its 170 million users in the US after President-elect Donald Trump said he would issue an executive order to give the app a reprieve when he takes office on Monday. And let me see if I can find you. There was an unbelievable ass-kissing from TikTok for Donald Trump. All the kids will know the name Trump now because TikTok put this up. Statement from TikTok. In agreement with our service providers, TikTok is in the process of restoring service. We thank President Trump for providing the necessary clarity and assurance to our service providers that they will face no penalties providing TikTok to over 170 million Americans and allowing over 7 million small businesses to thrive. It's a strong stand for the First Amendment and against arbitrary censorship. We will work with President Trump on a long-term solution that keeps TikTok in the United States. And there you have it. Donnie Darko's done it again. The art of the deal. Looks like they are going to make that deal. Someone's going to get a share of something they shouldn't be entitled to. An oligarch's going to get wealthier than they were ever entitled to, all because of this nightmarish clusterfuck. But anyway, always with their finger on the pulse was this chap. And I have to admire the rage baiting, the engagement baiting. When you're good, you're good. Everyone's favourite influencer, if you're a Dem, who was on suicide watch at the prospect of losing his TikTok account, Harry J. Sisson, he realised that it's time to thank President Joe Biden for allowing TikTok to come back online in the United States. Thank you, President Biden. Biden, of course, asleep the whole time. But I love the hustle. He knows it wasn't Joe Biden, and underneath all MAGA land, he's going, no, it wasn't. It was Trump. It was Trump. They even said it was Trump. Fantastic. Just on a serious note, obviously, I'm against censorship and arbitrary censorship, and I didn't really want the banning of TikTok. But equally, I think one of the things I would like to see, just broadly, is hopefully this can kickstart a sensible conversation about social media in general. Because I think now, if one of the arguments are we must protect our children from being exposed to things they shouldn't be exposed to, well, I've got a way that we can protect our children. Don't let children use social media. Legislate it, regulate it, in the same way you do pornography, in the same way you do other things that are bad for people. Let's get an 18-year-old limit for social media and make social media great again. That's what I want to do. That and get League of Legends banned somehow.